But after a while you realise time flies. And the best thing that you can do is take whatever comes to you. 'Cause time flies.
Before the incident, you told Paul, actually, in the former interview, that Fear of a Blank Planet, it was kind of your reaction to living in the technological age of the 21st century. Did people really understand the concept, and or was it something that went on in your mind? Did they really get the title of the album and the concept?
Well, obviously some people did and some people didn't. I think the important thing is that when you make an album that you put a lot of thought into, and the lyrical content and concept is important to you. I think it's important that you also make it work purely as music, pop music, rock music. I think there are some examples in history of rock music where people have become so focused on the concept that the music begins to suffer. I've always tried to walk a line between making the lyrics very thoughtful, but at the same time I still want it to work as great music. Fear of a Blank Planet is probably as close as I've ever come to something that was very lyric. I guess that was an album that was kind of hard to engage with without engaging in some way with the ideas behind the lyrics. But most people seem to, most people seem to empathise with that lyrical idea. Most people, if you say to them, do you think that iPods and the internet has made for more and better music, would agree, no, it hasn't really. So technology, while it makes things more convenient, it doesn't improve the quality of life at all. And I think most people would agree with that concept. Nobody's going to say that the cell phone, the iPod, the internet, the television and computer gaming has made life higher quality. I think it just makes it more convenient.
I think we just have lost a lot of time.
Well, we seem to have less time than ever. That's the funny thing.
It is.
Yeah.
More time for distractions.
And well, that's it. Isn't that the great irony? That things like cell phones were supposed to give us more time, and the internet and all these things, and cell phones and iPods are supposed to give us more time, but actually they take up so much time, mucking about, making sure you've got the latest software update, loading it up with content, and it's very distracting.
Is that why the incident is like a 55-minute song? Because people has to stay put.
It's funny, when we release the album, in fact we've done that on the last couple of records, we do this thing now where we get all the press along to a playback session, and we take their phones away from them, and we actually sit them in a room and we get them to listen to the whole album in surround sound usually. And it's that idea that you can actually get somebody that probably normally would be listening to the album in their office while they're checking their email and texting someone and taking some calls and checking the cricket score on the TV. Take all that away from them and actually say, no, this is an album you're supposed to listen to as a musical continuum. And it's interesting that I think in some ways the art of listening to music has been or is being lost in a way that the art of, say, watching a movie or reading a book isn't. For example, people still go out and rent a DVD and they'll put aside 2 hours in the evening to sit down and watch that DVD from beginning to end. People don't do that with records, I don't think. I don't think people say, right, okay, I'm going to sit down and listen to Porcupine Tree's The Instant now. And they don't sit down and just listen for an hour to music. Even I find it hard to do that, without checking my email or checking my text. But I think, so it's almost like the art of listening has changed as well. And of course, over the last 20 years with MTV and reality TV and iPods and download, this whole kind of culture of playlists or the kind of jukebox mentality where you kind of constantly shuffling from one band to the other. So the idea of listening to an album from beginning to end, I'm not sure that exists so much now.
No, but at the same time, with bands like Porcupine Tree and a few other bands, it's actually taking a little bit of that feeling back. Because if you really want to get something out of the albums, you have to. And that's at least the way I see it.
Well, the best analogy I can give is you wouldn't pick up a novel, like a book, and read chapter 6 and then put it down again.
No.
And then read chapter 3 of another book, and then read chapter 14 of another book. But that's what people are doing with music. You know, they're kind of shuffling. You know, always, I'll listen to one track of that. Then, so the idea of the album as a novel for me, the kind of literary analogy works, because a novel you read from beginning to end. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
No.
So why not apply that same logic to listening to an album? And so this, if you like, is kind of a novel. You're supposed to listen to it in a kind of linear way from beginning to end, and you will get more out of it. And I think some of the incident is obviously not meant to be listened to out of context. Some of the pieces of music are very short linking, kind of linking devices or vignettes, which kind of link the more kind of solid song sections together. But all the albums I grew up with, loving, had that kind of feeling. Not every part of the journey can be, as exciting as every other part of the journey, but it's still an important part of the journey nevertheless.
Does it surprise you that let's say, for example, in Norway, that the album entered the charts at number 19?
Did it? I didn't even know that. That's nice to know.
There you go.
Right.
I've got a new job.
So
something like that.
Chart reporting.
Yeah, I heard. I believe Fear of a Blank Planet went in at number 34, and this one number 19. Things like that. I mean, are they something? I guess you don't find it gratifying from an artistic point of view because you can't. But is it rewarding to you to see that people are either following the band from before, or you're getting new people on board?
I think anyone who tells you that sales or the number of people that are listening to the music is unimportant is probably not being entirely truthful. And it's not because money is important or stardom or celebrity is important, but I think it's a very natural thing that if you make music that you believe is very special, there's a very natural inclination to want to share that with as many people as possible, and to feel like as many people as possible have had the opportunity to hear it. So I'm still kind of excited about the fact the band's fan base is growing, and the band's fan base becomes more and more difficult to categorise. People say to me, "What kind of people come to your shows?" I say, "All of them."
And especially now, if it's also, I think it's very strange that there's very few bands these days who are actually. I mean, you wouldn't quite categorise Porcupine Tree as mainstream, but it's a band that's crossing over a lot, and you're selling more albums as time goes on, which is not easy these days.
No, and it's certainly not by design either. I mean, we're as surprised as anyone that we continue to sell. Every album we bring out seems to reach a bigger audience than the one before, and I can only put it down to this word of mouth thing, which we were talking about before. And I think the fact that our music has never been really part of any scene, which I have to say at times in the past has been very frustrating. It's very frustrating to realise that if you're a heavy metal band, if you sort of come out and you say, we're a heavy metal band, you have instant access to magazines, radio shows, package of tours you can go on with other heavy metal bands. We never had any of that because we never really existed within a genre. Yes, we had a little bit of crossover into metal. Yes, we had a little bit of crossover into alternative. Yes, we had a little bit of crossover into progressive. But we always distanced ourselves slightly from being completely immersed in any one scene. So it made it very difficult for us. We might get a little article in a heavy metal magazine. We might do a festival with. So it's one of those things that I think was frustrating for many years, but now is really beginning to pay off. Because the people that discover Porcupine Tree can come from any musical genre, any background, and they don't tend to be very fickle. What I mean by that is they don't sort of get into the band for a few months, then move on to another band. They stay with us.